The Mustang was whipped daily until he fought back. What happened next will leave you stunned. In the wide open plains of a small dusty town, there lived a Mustang, unlike any other. His coat was dark brown, almost black, and it shone under the sun like a polished gem. His mane was long and wild, flowing in the wind like a river of midnight silk. Despite his beauty, the Mustang's life was far from easy. Every day he faced harsh treatment from the man who claimed to own him. This man was known in the town for his strict ways and cruel temper. No one had seen kindness in him, especially not toward animals. And the Mustang, wild at heart and full of energy, had become the target of his daily punishments. From sunrise to sunset, the Mustang was whipped. Not once, not twice, but many times a day. The whip would crack against his back, making him flinch, and sometimes fall. But even as he staggered, he would get up again, his dark eyes filled with a mix of fear and defiance. He did not understand why the man was so harsh, but he did understand one thing clearly: he had to survive. People in the town often watched the Mustang from a distance. They whispered to each other about his spirit and strength. "That horse is different," they would say. "He doesn't give up, no matter what." But no one dared to step in. They feared the owner, who was known to punish anyone who interfered. And so, day after day, the Mustang endured. His coat, which could have been shining like polished wood, became dull with dust and sweat. His hooves grew sore from running on hard, rocky soil, and his muscles ached from constant fear and struggle. Yet, something deep inside him refused to break. The Mustang's life was not always this way. Once he had roamed freely with a herd, running across endless fields, feeling the wind in his mane and the soft grass under his hooves. But fate had changed. He was captured one cold morning by the man who now claimed him. The memory of freedom lingered in the Mustang's mind, a memory that made each whipping sting even more sharply. He remembered the joy of racing across the plains, of leaping over small streams, of rolling in the soft mud after a summer rain. That joy had been taken from him, replaced by chains, harsh voices, and fear. Even in this harsh environment, the Mustang remained smart. He observed everything around him. He learned when the man would approach, how the whip would move, and how fast he had to react to avoid a strike. Over time, he became clever. He would dodge, weave, and sometimes run just out of reach, earning small victories that kept his spirit alive. It was not much, but it was enough to remind him that he was not completely powerless. Among those who secretly watched him, there was one person who began to feel a connection with the Mustang. A young stable hand, quiet and gentle, had started noticing the horse's suffering. Unlike the others, he did not turn away. He would linger near the fence, carrying small handfuls of oats or a bit of water, placing them where the Mustang could reach them. At first, the Mustang was cautious. He had learned not to trust humans easily, but slowly he realized that the young man meant no harm. He was different from the owner, different from everyone else. He was kind. The stable hand did not speak much. He didn't need to. His actions were enough to communicate his care. The Mustang began to approach him cautiously, first with a lowered head sniffing, then with a gentle nudge of his nose against the hand that fed him. It was a small act of trust, but to the Mustang, it meant the world. In these quiet moments, he could almost forget the pain, almost forget the harshness of the world he lived in. Even as he faced cruelty, the Mustang never lost his sense of pride. He would stand tall, lift his head high, and stare at the horizon as if imagining the freedom that still existed somewhere out there. The whip might strike him, the chains might bind him, but no one could take away his spirit. Every glance at the sky, every sound of the wind, every whisper of the grass reminded him that he was meant to run, meant to be free. Some days were worse than others. The man could be unpredictable. Sometimes he would lash out at the Mustang for no reason, shouting harsh words that made the horse's ears flatten back in fear. But the Mustang adapted. He learned to stay alert, to move quickly, and to watch for any sign of danger. His body became stronger, more agile, and more aware. Every scar, every bruise, every mark on his coat told a story of survival, a story of endurance that no one else could see clearly. Despite the harshness of his life, the Mustang had moments of quiet joy. When the sun set and the world turned a soft golden color, he would watch it silently, imagining the life he could have. When the stable hand was near, offering a piece of apple or a handful of oats, he would nuzzle gently, feeling a brief warmth in his heart. These small moments kept him alive, kept him dreaming, and kept him planning. Even in chains, his mind remained free. The townspeople began to take notice of the Mustang's intelligence. Children would point him out when they passed by. "Look at that horse. He's amazing," they would whisper. Some adults shook their heads, saying it was just an animal instinct, but deep down they felt a sense of awe. Here was a creature, treated cruelly every day, yet still refusing to bow down, still refusing to lose hope. It was a lesson that resonated silently with everyone who watched, though few admitted it aloud. As weeks passed, the Mustang's strength grew, not just in body but in spirit. He learned patterns, anticipated actions, and began to dream more boldly. He imagined running again, imagining the grass beneath his hooves, the wind through his mane, and the freedom that had once been his. Each time the whip came close, he moved just enough to avoid it, feeling a surge of small victory. These victories, though tiny, mattered. They reminded him that one day he might not just survive, he might escape. The stable hand continued his quiet support. He spoke softly to the Mustang when he thought no one else was watching, telling him gentle words that no one else would ever say. "You're strong, you're smart. You deserve better." The Mustang seemed to understand. He would lower his head, press against the hand, and for a moment, the pain of his past seemed to fade. He had an ally, even if it was just one human who cared. And so, life continued, day after day. The Mustang faced cruelty, yes, but he also held on to hope. He had survived each day, and with each passing moment, he grew smarter, stronger, and more determined. Deep inside, a fire began to burn, a fire that would not be extinguished by whips, chains, or harsh words. That fire was the spark of his spirit, the spark of freedom, and the spark of defiance. The Mustang did not know when the moment would come, but he sensed it. He knew that one day he would have a chance to fight back. Until then, he observed, he learned, and he survived. He waited patiently, because patience was a weapon, and hope was his shield. No one could break his spirit entirely. He was a Mustang, born to run, born to fight, and born to be free. The sun set on the dusty town, casting long shadows over the plains. The Mustang stood tall, muscles tense but proud, eyes shining with quiet determination. Tomorrow would be another day of struggle, another day of harsh words and cruel hands. But tomorrow would also bring opportunity. The Mustang could feel it, deep in his chest. The fire within him burned brighter than ever, and he knew that someday, somehow, he would take back the life that had been stolen from him. Until that day came, he waited, he endured, and in his heart he held on to a simple truth. No matter what anyone did to him, he would never give up. He would never bow. He would never stop dreaming of freedom. Days passed, but the Mustang's life did not change. The whip continued to strike, the chains continued to hold, and the harsh words of his owner echoed in his ears. Yet, something had shifted within him. The fire inside, which had been quietly burning in part one, now grew stronger. He was no longer just surviving. He was learning, observing, and planning. Each day he studied the man who controlled him. He watched his movements, the way he held the whip, the moments when he grew distracted. Little by little, the Mustang began to understand that even the strongest chains could be broken, and even the harshest owner had weaknesses. The stable hand, young and gentle, became an even greater source of comfort. Every day he would quietly approach the Mustang, offering food and soft words. "It's okay," he would whisper. "You're safe here with me." At first, the Mustang only accepted the food, keeping his distance. But over time, he began to lower his head when the young man came near, allowing him to touch his mane and neck. This small trust was a big victory, and it encouraged the Mustang. He began to realize that not every human was cruel. Some could be kind, and some could even help him find a way to freedom. Even as these quiet moments of hope grew, the cruelty of the owner intensified. Some days, the whip cracked more harshly than ever. Sometimes, the owner would lash out simply because he was frustrated with his own life, and the Mustang had no choice but to endure. On those days, the horse's heart would pound, and fear would try to take over. But instead of breaking, he began to respond differently. He would move quickly, almost like a dance, avoiding the whip with skillful steps. His hooves dug into the dirt as he twisted and turned, each movement becoming sharper, faster, and more precise. The Mustang was learning how to survive, and survival required not just strength, but intelligence. His mind grew sharper with each passing day. He noticed patterns. He noticed when the man was angry, when he was careless, and when he would step too close. The Mustang realized that if he could wait patiently and stay alert, he could turn the tables. This thought filled him with determination. He had endured enough. He was strong enough. He could fight back, but only if he was smart. The idea of fighting back began to grow inside him like a seed, small but powerful, ready to sprout. The stable hand noticed this change in the Mustang as well. He began spending more time near him, speaking softly, giving him encouragement. "You're stronger than he thinks," he said one afternoon, brushing the dust off the Mustang's back. The horse tilted his head as if he understood every word. In that moment, a bond formed that went beyond food or touch. The stable hand became a silent ally, someone who could help the Mustang stay calm, focused, and brave. The Mustang was no longer completely alone, but the danger never left. One day, the man's anger reached a peak. He lashed at the Mustang with all his strength, shouting words that cut like knives. The Mustang felt a surge of fear, but also a spark of defiance. He realized that running blindly would not be enough. He needed to think, to anticipate, to strike back when the moment was right. That afternoon, as he dodged and twisted, he felt a new sense of power within his body. His muscles worked like never before, moving with speed and precision. The whip struck the ground, the dirt flying, and the Mustang felt the thrill of survival like never before. The townspeople, too, began to notice the Mustang's growing spirit. Some of them would watch from afar, whispering among themselves, "That horse, he's learning. He's clever." Children would point and cheer quietly, while adults shook their heads, admiring the animal's intelligence but remaining cautious. No one dared intervene, not yet, but many began to hope that the Mustang could somehow escape his harsh fate. They saw in him a courage that humans often lacked, the courage to endure without giving up, even when every day brought pain. Even at night, when the ranch was quiet and the stars shone above, the Mustang would think. He remembered the days when he had run free, the feel of the soft grass beneath his hooves, the rush of wind in his mane. He imagined it again and again, letting the memory fill him with hope. Each night he would lie down briefly, resting his tired legs, but his mind stayed alert. He planned, he dreamed, and he imagined how he could finally be free. Sleep did not bring him peace, but it brought him strategy. Every night he learned a little more about what he needed to do. The stable hand sometimes stayed late, watching over the Mustang. He would whisper stories of hope and courage, telling him, "One day, you will be free. I know it. You just have to wait for the right moment." The Mustang pressed his muzzle against the hand, and for a moment the world felt safe. These nights, quiet and calm, became his secret strength. They reminded him that freedom was not just a dream, it was possible. One afternoon, something unusual happened. The Mustang noticed that the man had become careless. He had left the gate slightly open, and for a brief moment, the world beyond the fence seemed within reach. The Mustang's heart raced. Could this be the moment he had been waiting for? He paused, considering his options. The stable hand was nearby, watching nervously. He whispered, "Be careful. Don't rush. Watch and wait." The Mustang understood. Patience was as important as courage. He would not run blindly, for he knew that strength without thought could lead to disaster. As the days went on, the Mustang's skills grew. He learned to anticipate every movement of the man, to feel the tension in the air before the whip came down. He began to practice small acts of resistance, testing his power. He would rear slightly when cornered, kick at the air to intimidate, and dodge with increasing speed. Each small victory boosted his confidence, showing him that he was not powerless. Every bruise, every scar became a reminder of how much he had survived and how capable he had become. The stable hand also began to help in secret. He left extra food near the gate, making it easier for the Mustang to gather energy. He would quietly observe, making sure the horse did not overexert himself. Slowly, he became a partner in the Mustang's journey, even though no one else in the town knew. The Mustang felt this bond deeply. For the first time, he realized that he had someone who believed in him, someone who wanted to see him free. That belief became a lifeline, giving him strength, even when the whip struck hard. The Mustang's mind became a battlefield of strategy and courage. He imagined every possible scenario, every escape route, and every way to turn his suffering into freedom. He became more than just a horse surviving harsh treatment. He became a planner, a thinker, a silent warrior. Each day, the fire inside him burned brighter, fueled by pain, hope, and determination. The world beyond the fence was calling to him, and he could almost feel the soft grass and open skies in his dreams. Then, one evening, a storm rolled in. The wind howled across the plains, rattling the fences and tossing dust into the air. The Mustang stood tall against the wind, muscles tense, eyes alert. The storm was frightening, but it also gave him a strange sense of freedom. He could imagine running through the rain, hooves splashing in puddles, mane flying wildly. The storm became a symbol in his mind, chaotic, unpredictable, powerful, just like the moment when he would finally take control of his life. The stable hand stayed near, speaking softly. You just have to trust yourself." The Mustang lowered his head, pressing against the hand in quiet gratitude. He knew the time to wait was almost over. The world beyond the ranch was near, and he could feel it in his chest. Every whip strike, every harsh word, every painful moment had prepared him for what was coming. He was not just a Mustang anymore. He was a fighter, a strategist, a soul refusing to be broken. And so, life continued, a delicate balance of fear and hope. Each day was a test, each night a lesson. The Mustang's spirit grew stronger, his mind sharper, and his heart braver. He waited, patient and clever, for the right moment to act. He had endured the worst, learned the most, and prepared for the moment when he would no longer be a prisoner. The fire inside him would not be quenched, and the world would soon witness the strength of a Mustang who refused to be broken. The days of waiting, watching, and enduring had finally led to a moment the Mustang had been anticipating for a long time. His muscles were stronger, his mind sharper, and his heart braver than ever before. Every whip strike, every harsh word, and every painful day had taught him lessons he would never forget. Now, deep inside, a new feeling stirred. The Mustang was no longer willing to simply survive. He was ready to fight back. It all began one early morning. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange as the sun rose over the plains. The ranch was quiet, except for the distant crows and the rustle of dry grass in the wind. The man who owned the Mustang had left the gate slightly open, distracted by chores in the barn. The Mustang's dark eyes noticed this immediately. He felt the surge of possibility that had been building inside him for weeks. Today might be the day he could finally take control. The stable hand, sensing something unusual, approached the Mustang quietly. He whispered, "Be careful. Stay calm. I know you can do this." The Mustang nudged his hand in response, a silent promise that he understood. There was a connection between them now, unspoken but deeply felt. The stable hand had been a source of comfort, guidance, and courage, and the Mustang knew he could not disappoint him. The man returned, carrying a bucket of water. He did not notice how alert the Mustang had become, how every muscle in his body was ready to spring into action. The Mustang shifted his weight, testing the ground under his hooves. He reared slightly, then dropped down, circling the yard with careful, deliberate steps. His eyes never left the man, measuring every movement, every possible threat. For the first time, he felt not just fear, but power. Suddenly, the man raised his whip, thinking the Mustang would flinch as usual. But the Mustang did not flinch. He twisted, ducked, and kicked in one swift motion that surprised even himself. The whip struck the ground harmlessly. The stable hand gasped quietly, knowing that the Mustang had finally learned to defend himself. A spark of excitement lit the Mustang's chest. This was no longer just survival. This was resistance. The man, furious at the Mustang's defiance, lashed out again, but the Mustang had studied him too well. He anticipated the strike, sidestepped, and let out a powerful neigh that echoed across the ranch. His voice was not just a sound, it was a warning, a message that he would no longer be controlled without a fight. The wind carried his strength, and even the birds in the trees seemed to pause and listen. This was the turning point. The Mustang's confidence grew with every move. He was no longer a victim. He had become a fighter. With each buck, kick, and twist, he challenged the man, showing that he was strong, clever, and determined. The man shouted, trying to regain control, but the Mustang was too quick, too smart. Every action the man took only made the Mustang more alert, more focused, more ready to take the next step. The stable hand watched from a safe distance, heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. He knew the Mustang was taking a great risk, but he also knew that this moment had been building for weeks, months even. The horse had endured cruelty, learned patience, and studied every weakness of his owner. Now all that preparation was about to pay off. The stable hand whispered encouragement, "You can do it. You're ready. Freedom is near." The Mustang's eyes met his, filled with understanding, and then returned to the task at hand. The Mustang's movements became faster, more precise. He would rear, spin, and charge, testing the man's reactions. Each time he learned more, growing bolder, stronger, and more confident. It was no longer just instinct. He was thinking, planning, and predicting. The whip, once a symbol of fear, became a challenge he could face and overcome. His heart raced with adrenaline, but he kept his focus sharp, knowing that one careless move could end everything. By late morning, the man's anger reached a peak. He struck harder, shouting louder, but the Mustang did not falter. He had grown beyond the need to flee. Every strike taught him something new, and he used that knowledge to turn the situation to his advantage. The stable hand watched in awe as the Mustang's movements became almost like a dance, flowing and powerful, each action carefully measured, yet full of raw energy. At one point, the Mustang spotted the slightly open gate again. His heart surged with hope. If he could reach it, he could taste freedom, even if just for a moment. He began to move strategically, keeping the man off balance while edging closer to the gate. His hooves dug into the dirt with determination, his muscles coiled like springs, ready to release in a burst of speed. Every step brought him closer to the life he had dreamed of for so long. The man, realizing the Mustang's intentions, grew more desperate. He shouted, raised his arms, and lunged forward, but the Mustang was ready. With one swift movement, he sidestepped and gave a powerful kick, not to harm, but to assert his strength and determination. The man stumbled back, shocked by the Mustang's courage. It was the first time anyone had seen the horse fight back so boldly, and it left a mark in the mind of everyone watching. The stable hand felt his chest tighten with pride and worry. He had watched the Mustang suffer for so long, and now he was witnessing the moment when all that pain began to transform into power. The Mustang was no longer a silent victim. He was a force of nature, alive with courage and defiance. Every movement, every breath, every flick of his mane seemed to scream, "I will not be broken." The sun climbed higher, casting bright light over the plains. Dust rose from the ground as the Mustang moved with precision, dodging and rearing with a speed and intelligence that made it clear he was ready for more than just survival. The moment of true resistance had arrived. The Mustang was no longer content with merely avoiding harm. He was prepared to fight for his freedom, for his dignity, and for the life that had been stolen from him. In a sudden, decisive moment, the Mustang surged forward, not in fear, but with purpose. He charged toward the gate, muscles coiled, eyes focused, and heart pounding. The man tried to stop him, but he was too late. The Mustang was faster, smarter, and stronger than ever before. With a powerful leap, he kicked the gate open, sending it swinging wide. The wind caught his mane, the dust swirled around him, and for the first time in a long while he felt the taste of possibility, freedom within reach. The stable hand ran alongside the fence, cheering quietly, knowing that the Mustang's bravery had reached a new level. The townspeople who had gathered secretly to watch whispered in amazement, "He's doing it! He's fighting back!" The Mustang's courage became contagious, inspiring awe and hope in everyone who witnessed it. The horse had transformed from a victim into a fighter, showing the world that strength was not just in the body, but in the spirit. As the day continued, the Mustang tested the limits of his courage. He circled the yard, dodging, rearing, and charging with precise timing. Each movement was a lesson in strategy, a demonstration of intelligence and willpower. The whip that had once caused him fear now barely reached him, striking nothing but empty air. He had grown beyond fear. He had grown beyond pain. He had grown into a being of power and defiance, capable of changing his fate. By late afternoon, the man's anger turned to fear. He realized that the Mustang was no longer the same horse he had beaten and controlled for so long. This Mustang had learned, adapted, and grown. He was clever, strong, and ready. The man took a step back, unsure of what to do next, while the Mustang stood tall, proud, and fearless. The world seemed to pause for a moment, watching the balance of power shift. The stable hand approached carefully, his eyes filled with admiration and concern. He spoke softly. "You've done it. Done it. You're ready. Just a little longer, and freedom will be yours." The Mustang responded with a soft neigh, a sound full of gratitude, determination, and understanding. He was ready. The moment he had waited for so long was almost here. He was no longer just surviving. He was preparing to reclaim his life. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plains, the Mustang paused for a brief moment. He looked at the horizon, imagining the fields of grass, the open skies, and the freedom that awaited him. Every strike of the whip, every harsh word, every moment of suffering had led to this point. The Mustang's spirit had been tested, his patience stretched. But now he was ready to act. The fire inside him burned brighter than ever, guiding him toward the life he deserved. That evening marked the turning point. The Mustang had fought back, learned his own strength, and discovered the power within. The stable hand watched silently, knowing that the next steps would decide the Mustang's fate. The horse had grown beyond fear, beyond pain, and beyond control. He was no longer a victim. He was a fighter, and the moment to seize his freedom was near. The next morning the ranch was quiet, almost eerily so. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden glow across the plains. Everything seemed calm, but the Mustang's dark eyes burned with determination. He knew that today was the day he had been preparing for. Months of endurance, patience, and quiet observation had led to this moment. Every scar, every bruise, every painful memory had become a part of his strength. He was ready to reclaim his freedom. The man appeared, carrying the whip as he did every morning. He glanced around lazily, not noticing the fire that had ignited in the Mustang. To him, the horse was still the same animal he had beaten countless times. He did not realize that the Mustang had changed. The horse was no longer fearful, no longer timid, no longer willing to be controlled. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready to spring. Every movement he had learned, every strategy he had planned, was now about to be put into action. The stable hand approached quietly, watching with both hope and worry. He whispered softly, "Be careful. You are ready."
"Remember everything you've learned." The Mustang lowered his head slightly, pressing against the gentle hand.
In that simple gesture, the bond between them was clear. The Mustang was not alone, and he drew strength from that connection. The hand that had once offered comfort now gave courage. As the man raised his whip, intending to strike as usual, the Mustang acted. With a sudden surge of power, he reared high into the air, muscles tensed, mane flying wildly. The whip cracked against empty air. The Mustang landed gracefully, shifting his weight and preparing for the next move. His hooves dug into the dirt, sending dust swirling around him like smoke from a fire. The man stepped back, surprised by the sheer energy and precision of the horse. This was no ordinary Mustang. This was a creature transformed by courage, determination, and the will to be free. The Mustang circled the yard carefully, eyes locked on the man, measuring every move. He was no longer avoiding danger out of fear. He was testing his strength, asserting control. With each rearing, each kick, each sidestep, he demonstrated that he was more than capable of defending himself. The wind carried his powerful neigh across the plains, a sound that spoke of defiance, strength, and awakening. Even the trees seemed to shiver in response, as if acknowledging the presence of a being who refused to be controlled. The man, growing angry and frustrated, tried to regain control. He shouted, stomped his feet, and swung the whip again and again. But the Mustang anticipated every strike. He sidestepped, ducked, and reared with precision, each movement calculated, each action deliberate. It was no longer a battle of fear versus strength. It was a battle of intelligence, skill, and courage. The Mustang had learned the man's patterns, understood his weaknesses, and now he used them to his advantage. Dust filled the air as the Mustang charged toward the fence, then pivoted sharply, kicking at the ground and sending splinters of dirt into the air. The stable hand gasped quietly, realizing that the Mustang had grown beyond survival instincts. He was now a warrior in his own right, a fighter who had turned pain into power. The entire ranch seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when the Mustang would break free completely. Suddenly, the man made a mistake. In his frustration, he stepped too close to the gate, leaving a small opening wide enough for the Mustang to slip through. The horse's heart raced. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the opportunity he had been preparing for months. He paused for a brief second, gathering strength, then charged forward with all the power in his legs and shoulders. Dust flew in his wake, hooves pounding the ground like the beat of war drums. The stable hand ran alongside, cheering softly, urging him forward. Now. Go. You can do it, the Mustang responded with a powerful leap, muscles coiled and tense, flying toward the open gate. The wind rushed past his face, whipping his mane into a wild dance. For the first time in what felt like forever, he saw the world beyond the ranch. Endless plains, soft grass, open skies, and the freedom he had dreamed of. His chest swelled with pride and relief. He was almost there. The man tried to stop him, lunging forward with the whip. But the Mustang was faster, smarter, and stronger. With one final burst of energy, he kicked at the gate, sending it swinging wide. The whip struck only empty air. The Mustang's hooves hit the soft grass beyond, and he galloped forward without looking back. The plains stretched endlessly ahead, and the wind carried the sound of his powerful neigh across the fields. He was free. The townspeople, who had gathered quietly to watch, gasped in amazement. They had seen the horse endure so much, and now they witnessed his triumph. Children pointed excitedly, whispering to each other, while adults shook their heads in awe. He did it. He really did it, one woman said softly. The Mustang had become more than just a horse. He was a symbol of courage, resilience, and freedom. The stable hand stood near the fence, watching the Mustang disappear into the horizon. He smiled quietly, tears in his eyes. He had been part of this journey, a witness to the Mustang's growth from a beaten animal into a proud, powerful fighter. He whispered to himself, "You deserved this. You were always meant to be free." The bond between them had been strong, but now it was no longer needed in the same way. The Mustang had taken his first steps into a new life. The Mustang ran across the plains, feeling the wind in his mane, the soft earth beneath his hooves, and the warmth of the sun on his back. Every step was a celebration, every breath a reminder that he had survived, learned, and now thrived. The pain of the past could not reach him here. The fear, the cruelty, the chains, they were all behind him. Ahead lay freedom, strength, and the life he had been dreaming of for so long. Even as he ran, he remembered the lessons he had learned. Patience, courage, intelligence, and the power of quiet allies, all of it had led to this moment. The stable hand's encouragement, the careful observation of his surroundings, the strength he had built in his muscles and mind, it all culminated in this one glorious burst of freedom. The Mustang had become the master of his own fate, and nothing could take that away. Hours passed, and the Mustang explored the fields beyond the ranch. He leapt over streams, ran across meadows, and felt the soft mud beneath his hooves for the first time in months. The joy was overwhelming, but it was more than just happiness. It was the pure essence of living as he was meant to live. He stopped for a brief moment to look back at the distant ranch, now a place of his past. He had conquered it, outsmarted it, and now left it behind. As night fell, the Mustang found a quiet hill to rest on, gazing at the stars above. The cool breeze ruffled his mane, and the world felt vast, infinite, and welcoming. He had survived cruelty, endured countless hardships, and transformed his suffering into strength. Now, under the blanket of the night sky, he could simply be free. The fire that had burned inside him for so long had become a steady flame, warm and constant, guiding him toward the life he deserved. In the town, the story of the Mustang's escape spread quickly. People whispered about the horse who had fought back, who had stood tall against cruelty, and who had finally claimed his freedom. The legend grew with each retelling. Children spoke of him as if he were a hero from a storybook, while adults admired the courage and intelligence that had allowed a single horse to triumph over fear. The Mustang had become more than an animal. He had become a symbol of hope and resilience. The stable hand returned to a small cabin, heart full of pride and quiet joy. He knew that he had witnessed something extraordinary. He had seen the Mustang grow from a beaten and fearful creature into a fighter, and finally, a free being. And he knew that, even though the horse was now beyond his reach, the bond they shared would never be forgotten. In that bond, he had learned lessons about patience, courage, and the power of quiet support. And so the Mustang ran through the plains, fearless and unbroken, every hoofbeat echoing a story of survival and triumph. He had endured cruelty, faced fear, and discovered the strength within himself. The world beyond the ranch was wide open and welcoming, and he ran with a joy and pride that no one could take away. The Mustang had claimed his life, his freedom, and his spirit. After that glorious day when the Mustang had finally broken free, life on the plains changed forever. The wind carried his powerful neigh across the hills, and even the birds seemed to notice his presence, flying higher and singing louder, as if celebrating his freedom. The Mustang, who had endured months of hardship, cruel treatment, and fear, now felt the true meaning of life, the ability to run, explore, and live without chains or pain. Every step he took was a victory, every breath a celebration of survival and strength. The stable hand, who had quietly supported the Mustang from the beginning, felt a mixture of pride, joy, and relief. He had watched the horse grow from a fearful, beaten creature into a fighter, and now a free spirit. The bond between them had been silent but strong, built on trust, kindness, and understanding. Even though he could not run with the Mustang across the plains, he felt a deep connection every time he imagined the horse galloping through the open fields, mane flowing, hooves pounding the earth. The stable hand smiled quietly, whispering to himself, "You were always meant to be free. You were always meant to be free." The town, which had been quietly observing the Mustang for months, soon learned of his escape. Word spread quickly. carried by whispers and then loud conversations, until everyone knew the story. Children told it to their friends, amazed that a single horse could stand up to cruelty and win. Adults nodded in admiration, recognizing courage and intelligence when they saw it. The Mustang became more than just an animal. He became a symbol, a reminder that resilience, patience, and strength could overcome even the hardest circumstances. Meanwhile, the Mustang explored the world beyond the ranch with curiosity and courage. The plains stretched endlessly before him, filled with soft grass, sparkling streams, and gentle hills. The scent of fresh air, flowers, and soil filled his nostrils, a stark contrast to the dust, sweat, and fear he had known for so long. He ran with abandon, feeling the power of his muscles, the rhythm of his hooves, and the freedom of his spirit. Each gallop strengthened him, each leap reminded him of the life he had once dreamed of, and each pause allowed him to reflect on how far he had come. At night, the Mustang would often stop on a quiet hill, gazing at the stars above. The sky seemed bigger, brighter, and full of possibility now that he was free. The cool breeze ruffled his mane, and he could feel the pulse of the earth beneath his hooves. In these moments, he felt peace. The chains, the whip, and the fear of the past had faded, replaced by the joy of living fully, truly, and freely. He had endured suffering and learned patience, courage, and strategy. Now he could simply be himself, a proud Mustang living as he was meant to live. The stable hand continued to check the plains from time to time, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Mustang. Whenever he saw him in the distance, galloping across a field or leaping over a stream, he felt a swell of happiness in his heart. The Mustang had not just escaped physically, he had escaped the cruelty, fear, and oppression that had once defined him. He was no longer a victim, he was a symbol of strength and hope. The stable hand shared the story quietly with a few trusted friends, ensuring that the Mustang's courage would be remembered, even if only by those who truly understood. The Mustang's fame grew naturally. Travelers passing through the plains would catch sight of him, dark coat gleaming in the sun, mane flowing wildly, hooves kicking up clouds of dust. They would tell stories in nearby towns and villages about the wild Mustang who had fought back and won his freedom. Over time, the legend spread farther and farther, until the Mustang became a symbol of resilience and courage across the region. People began to see him not just as a horse, but as an inspiration, a living example of what it meant to endure hardship and rise above it. Even though he was free, the Mustang never forgot the lessons he had learned during his time on the ranch. He remained cautious, alert, and aware of danger. He understood the importance of patience, observation, and intelligence. These lessons had saved his life and had given him the strength to fight back when the moment was right. He moved with purpose now, exploring the plains with both joy and careful attention, knowing that true freedom required both courage and wisdom. Over time, the Mustang began to build a small herd. Other wild horses, attracted by his strength and confidence, joined him. They ran together, leapt together, and grazed together, forming a family that was both safe and strong. The Mustang, once alone and oppressed, had become a leader, respected and admired by those around him. He taught them by example, showing that strength came not only from power, but from patience, courage, and intelligence. The plains, once a place of fear and struggle, became a home filled with freedom, connection, and trust. The stable hand, though far from the Mustang physically, continued to take pride in him. Whenever he thought of the horse galloping freely across the plains, he felt a quiet joy that filled his heart. He had been a small part of the Mustang's journey, offering kindness and support when it mattered most. And though he could not be with the Mustang now, he knew that the horse carried both his gratitude and his lessons forward into the wide open world. seasons changed on the plains. Summer brought warmth, gentle breezes, and fields of tall green grass. Autumn painted the hills in gold and red, while winter blanketed the land in soft white snow. Through it all, the Mustang remained free, strong, and proud. He galloped across frozen streams, leapt over hills covered in snow, and rested under the shade of tall trees when the summer sun burned hot. The freedom he had fought for was no longer a dream. It was his reality. And yet, the Mustang story carried a deeper meaning for those who knew it. It reminded them that no matter how difficult life might be, no matter how cruel some may seem, courage, patience, and resilience could overcome even the darkest days. The Mustang had endured cruelty, pain, and fear, but he had never given up. He had waited, observed, and prepared, and in the end, he had claimed his freedom. His story became a lesson for humans and animals alike. The spirit cannot be broken if it is determined to survive and thrive. The Mustang's legacy grew with every passing day. Travelers, townspeople, and children spoke of him in awe. They would say, "He is the Mustang who refused to be broken," or "He is the horse who taught us courage." Even years later, the story of his bravery and determination was told as a reminder of the power of resilience. He had started as a beaten, chained horse, but he had ended as a symbol of hope, freedom, and strength. His name, though never officially written in books, lived on in the hearts of those who witnessed or heard of his journey. Sometimes the Mustang would pause at the top of a hill, looking back toward the distant town where he had once suffered. He would lift his head high, ears forward, and let out a long, proud neigh that echoed across the plains. It was a sound of triumph, of survival, and of freedom. The wind carried it far, and anyone who heard it would feel the story embedded in that sound, the story of endurance, courage, and the unstoppable will of a Mustang who refused to be broken. In the quiet moments when the sun dipped low and the sky blazed in shades of pink, orange, and purple, the Mustang would lie down for a brief rest, but even in those moments, his spirit was alive, alert, and free. The plains were now his home, the wind his companion, and the open skies his ceiling. He had endured cruelty, learned patience, gathered courage, and ultimately achieved freedom. The Mustang had become a living legend, a reminder that strength is not just in muscles but in spirit. And so, the Mustang ran across the plains, forever free. He had faced cruelty and fear, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and braver. His journey, from a beaten horse to a fearless symbol of courage, inspired everyone who heard of him. The stable hand remembered him with pride. The townspeople spoke of him in awe, and travelers carried his story across lands. The Mustang had not only claimed his freedom, but had left a legacy of hope, courage, and resilience that would endure for generations. In the end, the Mustang's life was a celebration of spirit. He had endured the worst and learned the best, teaching everyone who knew his story that no matter the hardships faced, courage, patience, and determination could transform suffering into strength. The Mustang had not just escaped his chains, he had claimed a life worth living, a life full of freedom, beauty, and endless possibilities. And under the endless sky of the plains he ran, proud and untouchable, a true symbol of strength, courage, and hope. The Mustang ran freely across the open plains, his mane flying in the wind, muscles rippling with every powerful stride. The sun shone brightly above, reflecting off his dark, glossy coat, and for the first time in months, maybe years, he felt completely alive. Every painful memory of whippings, harsh words, and confinement seemed to fade with each hoofbeat. He was free, not only in body but in spirit. Freedom, once a distant dream, was now his reality. The stable hand had watched the Mustang disappear into the horizon. Tears welled up in his eyes, not from sadness, but from pride and relief. He had been the quiet ally who offered food, comfort, and gentle words when no one else dared. He had witnessed the Mustang's suffering, his patience, and his courage grow day by day. Now, seeing the horse gallop into freedom, the stable hand felt that his own heart was running alongside him. The bond they had formed, unspoken yet strong, had played a part in helping the Mustang reclaim his life. The town, which had long whispered about the wild Mustang and the cruelty he had endured, soon spread the story far and wide. People told neighbors, friends, and travelers about the horse who had endured whip after whip, yet had refused to give up. Children spoke in awe about his bravery, imagining the Mustang galloping across endless fields under the open sky. Adults nodded knowingly, recognizing the strength and intelligence of the horse, and perhaps feeling inspired by his resilience. The Mustang was no longer just an animal. He had become a legend, a symbol of courage, patience, and the power to overcome hardship. As the days passed, the Mustang explored his new world with curiosity and confidence. The plains stretched endlessly before him, a vast expanse of green grass, gentle hills, and sparkling streams. He ran over soft soil, leaped over small streams, and rolled in the fresh mud after rainstorms, feeling alive in a way he had never known before. Each moment of joy reminded him that the life he had once only imagined was now his to live. He breathed deeply, taking in the scents of flowers, earth, and clean water. The freedom he had fought for filled his chest with pride and happiness. At night, under a sky full of stars, the Mustang would often pause on the top of a hill, gazing out at the endless plains. The cool breeze ruffled his mane, and he would tilt his head slightly as if listening to the stories carried by the wind. These moments were quiet and peaceful, but they were also powerful. The Mustang understood that freedom was not just running or exploring. It was the ability to choose, to live without fear, and to be fully himself. He had endured the harshest treatment, and now he could enjoy the pure joy of being alive. Even though he was free, the Mustang never forgot the lessons he had learned during his time on the ranch. He had learned patience by waiting for the right moment to act. He had learned courage by facing pain without giving up. He had learned intelligence by observing his owner and planning his actions carefully. These lessons had transformed him. He was not just a horse running across the plains. He was a being who understood the value of resilience and strategy. Every step he took was measured and confident, a reflection of the wisdom he had earned. The stable hand, though now watching from a distance, continued to follow the Mustang's story. Whenever he caught sight of him in the distance, galloping freely across the plains, he felt a deep joy. He knew that the Mustang had claimed more than just physical freedom. He had claimed the right to live with dignity and pride. The stable hand whispered to himself, "You have deserved this all along. Run, be free, and never look back." Though he could not be with the Mustang, the bond they shared remained strong, carried in the stable hand's memories and the Mustang's heart. The Mustang soon encountered other wild horses roaming the plains. At first they were cautious, watching him from afar. But the Mustang, with his proud stance and confident movements, slowly gained their trust. They began to follow him, forming a small herd that moved together across the plains. The Mustang had become more than just a free horse. He had become a leader. He guided the others, teaching them through example how to stay alert, how to respect one another, and how to thrive in the open world. The plains, once a place of fear and confinement, had become a home filled with connections, strength, and safety. The legend of the Mustang grew beyond the town. Travelers who passed through the region would often catch a glimpse of him, dark and majestic against the rolling hills. They would speak in awe about the horse who had endured cruel treatment and emerged stronger than ever. Over time, his story spread across villages and towns, inspiring anyone who heard it. The Mustang was no longer simply a horse. He had become a symbol of hope, courage, and resilience. People admired not just his strength, but his spirit. Seasons changed, and with them, the Mustang adapted gracefully to the rhythm of the plains. Summer brought long days of warmth and sunlit fields, where he ran freely from dawn to dusk. Autumn painted the hills in brilliant gold and red, and the Mustang leapt and ran through fallen leaves with unrestrained joy. Winter brought snow that blanketed the plains in white, yet he continued to explore, kicking through drifts and testing the strength of his hooves on frozen streams. Every season reminded him of the beauty of the world and the value of his freedom. Even in moments of rest, the Mustang remained alert. He had learned to trust the plains, but he also respected its dangers. He moved with careful attention, observing every sound, smell, and movement. His intelligence, honed during months of survival, guided him as much as his strength. Every day he learned a little more about the world he now called home, and he taught the other horses the same lessons he had learned. Patience, observation, courage, and intelligence became not just survival skills but principles for a life lived fully and freely. The stable hand, although far away, felt pride in knowing that the Mustang was thriving. He had been a small part of the horse's journey, providing kindness, comfort, and encouragement. That support, though quiet and unseen by others, had been enough to help the Mustang hold on to hope during the hardest days. Now, seeing him lead a herd and live freely, the stable hand felt that all the pain and struggle had transformed into something beautiful. The Mustang's courage had become a lesson for humans as well, a reminder that kindness and patience can help even the most broken spirits rise. The Mustang often stopped at the top of a hill at sunset, watching the sky burn in shades of pink, orange, and purple. He would lift his head and let out a long, proud neigh that echoed across the plains. It was a sound that carried his story, his suffering, his endurance, his intelligence, and finally, his triumph. Anyone who heard it, whether human or animal, could feel the spirit behind the sound. The Mustang's voice had become a symbol, a living reminder of what could be achieved with courage and perseverance. Even years later, the story of the Mustang lived on. Children who had heard of him in their youth passed the story to their own children. Adults who witnessed his strength and courage spoke of him in admiration, remembering the dark-coated horse who had faced cruelty and won his freedom. Travelers carried the tale to distant lands, spreading the legend of the Mustang who refused to be broken. His legacy became timeless, teaching generations about resilience, hope, and the power of the spirit. The Mustang had not only survived, he had transformed his suffering into strength. He had endured the harshest conditions, faced fear without giving in, and ultimately claimed the life he had always deserved. He became a teacher without words, a leader without command, and a symbol without intention. He had fought for his freedom, earned it through patience, courage, and intelligence, and inspired everyone who witnessed or heard his story. In the quiet moments under the stars, the Mustang would lie down, resting after days of running and exploring. But even in rest, his spirit remained vibrant. He had learned to live fully, freely, and wisely. Every hoofbeat, every gallop, every leap was a testament to his journey. From a horse who had once been whipped and chained to a free, proud, and unstoppable force of nature. The plains were his home, the wind his companion, the sun his guide, and the stars his night watch. The Mustang had endured, survived, and triumphed. He had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and freedom, a reminder to all who heard of him that no matter how hard life may try to break someone, the spirit can endure, fight, and rise above. And so the Mustang ran forever, unbroken, unstoppable, and free, leaving behind a legacy that would never fade.